Okay, so I know what you're thinking. I'm totally losing it. But trust me, I'm not insane. Just a little on edge. I mean, I'm not out of my mind. My senses are sharp, especially my hearing. I can hear everything: the rustling leaves outside, the traffic noise, even the low hum of the city at night. You think I'm mad? Just listen as I lay this all out for you. I can't pinpoint when it all started. It just kind of took over my thoughts. I wasn't after money or revenge. I just had this obsession. It was the old man's eye. His eye freaked me out. It was pale blue and cloudy, like something out of a horror movie. Whenever I looked into it, chills shot down my spine. At some point, I decided I needed to get rid of him, and that eye would never haunt me again. Now here's the kicker. You think I'm crazy, but just wait until you hear how methodically I planned everything. I treated him with so much kindness in the days leading up to it. I even checked in on him every night, gently, quietly. Around midnight, I would sneak into his room, just pushing the door open a tiny bit so he wouldn't wake up. I used a dark lantern so no light would slip out and disturb him. Can you imagine how patient I was? I'd spend an hour just getting my head in, just so I could see him lying there in the dark. If I were truly mad, would I be able to pull this off? Every time I checked, his eye was shut tight, until finally, on the 8th night, I was especially careful as I approached. My heart raced with excitement, knowing he had no idea I was there, right near him. As I creaked the door open, I could sense him stir. But nope, he couldn't see me in the dark. I was confident too confident maybe. Right then my thumb slipped on the lantern's catch, and the old man shot up in bed. "Who's there?" he called, but I stayed silent. We both listened, the silence stretching out painfully. I could feel his fear seeping through the room, a loud echo of my own panic. He was on edge, listening for ghosts of every tiny sound, too terrified to lay back down. Suddenly I heard a soft groan escape from him. It wasn't a regular sound. It was a deep, primal noise, the kind that comes straight from your soul when fear grips you. I knew that feeling all too well. A night of sleepless terror can do that. I felt both sympathy and exhilaration as I realized his fears were intensifying. Finally, I decided to take a risk and open the lantern just a crack. A thin beam of light shot out and landed right on the horrible eye. It was wide open, staring back at me, and I felt rage boiling inside me. It felt like fire coursing through my veins. I hated that eye. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of his heart pounding, much like a watch muffled in a blanket. Each thud fueled my fury, but I held my ground, hardly breathing, trying to keep my light steady on that eye. Meanwhile, the old man was obviously close to losing it. The heartbeats grew louder, faster. It was almost like music to my ears, driving me closer to the brink. But the sound kept building until it drowned everything else out. I was terrified it might be loud enough for a neighbor to hear. The moment was slipping away. With a scream, I burst into the room, flinging open the lantern. He let out one final shriek as if he knew what was coming. I rushed him, dragging him to the ground, throwing his bed over him. I took a deep breath, feeling ready to celebrate. After all that was done. But even with him under the bed, I could still hear that heartbeat, muffled but persistent. It could be heard through the walls. Oh, relief. When I looked at the old man again, sure enough, he was completely lifeless. I'm not crazy, it's just practical. I knew I had to hide the body, so I got to work. I cut him up, removed the head and limbs, and stashed the pieces between the floorboards. I replaced everything so cleverly that no one would ever suspect a thing. No blood, no traces, nothing. I'd planned well. Before long, it was 4 a.m. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. I couldn't help but feel giddy. Who was there to fear now? I went to answer, feeling light as a feather, even when 3 police officers walked in, casually introducing themselves. A neighbor had heard a scream, and it raised some eyebrows. I welcomed them, smiling as if nothing was wrong. I told them the scream was just me having a nightmare, and that the old man was away. I showed them around the house, eager to prove that everything was normal. Then we got to his room. I even offered them chairs, casually sitting right on the spot where the body lay hidden. They seemed satisfied, and I relaxed. Well, at least until I noticed my heart was racing. My face went pale, and as I felt something building inside me, the sound was growing more distinct. No matter how much I chatted, the noise just wouldn't stop. It was like a relentless ticking. I started to panic, pacing the floors. I desperately tried to stay composed. Please, just leave me, I pleaded silently, but they stayed. The noise grew louder and louder, far from my ears, beating relentlessly, and the officers laughed, seeming completely unaware. That's when I couldn't take it anymore. Stop pretending, I burst out, losing it. I did it! I killed him, I yelled. Tear up the planks. It's his heart. It's still beating under there. And there it was. My own guilt unraveling before me.